with a...
Eki means a stop for post horses. Den means to deliver or transmit. In the 1600s, using men and horses, this then the first Japanese mail system. But by 1917, the modern Ekiden evolved, a race between Kyoto and Tokyo to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the transfer of the Japanese capital. Today, Ekiden is one of the most popular sports in Japan, just as marathons enjoy huge success here in the U.S. Today, the best of both cultures become one in the inaugural Ekiden in the United States. A truly international field will race around the island of Manhattan, a relay race with 9 countries competing. Japan, of course, since this is where it all began. Canada has come, along with England, France, Ireland, Italy, Korea, the Soviets, and Uncle Sam's strongest. ESPN, the Total Sports Network, presents the 1988 Asics Cup, America's Ekiden. Today's live coverage is being brought to you by Asics and by Seiko, world leader in timing. Hi again, and good morning, everybody. I'm Jim Kelly, and welcome to New York City at dawn. It's 7 a.m. here, about 8 p.m., 12,000 miles or halfway around the world away in Tokyo, back where it all began. As we mentioned, a truly international elite field of 9 countries here, and all 50 states in the United States is being represented. Representing our expertise in track and field, Larry Rawson is alongside. And Larry, first question, how does this field stack up against more of the more familiar fields of the marathons we know here in the U.S.?
Well, Jim, while this is not strictly a marathon type of race, most of the distances running will be actually under 6 miles. But what we really have here is many of the best runners from all 50 states of the Union. Not all of them, but many of the best are here. We also have 8 nations of the world sending their very best. And let's take a fine look now at the course that Jim Kelly saw and laid out for us.
Well, Larry, covering a 50-kilometer course, 31 miles, in about 2 hours and 20 minutes certainly doesn't leave much time for sightseeing. But nevertheless, the course takes its 305 competitors through some of the most interesting sections of Manhattan. Up the west side, after the lower east side, and around the most famous 840 acres of real estate in Manhattan, Central Park, with the goal, the finishing line at Tavern on the Green, the same finishing line as the New York City Marathon. The first leg, 5 kilometers, 3.1 miles, begins at the United Nations and winds its way down the FDR Drive. So, Larry, who do you see as the early favorites?
Jim, while Canada and Italy are fielding strong teams, I think that the 3 most likely to succeed are Great Britain, led by Steve Jones. The 32-year-old Welsh military man has run the 2nd fastest marathon of all time. The United States team has Steve Scott on a leadoff leg. Scott just last week ran the fastest 5,000 meters on a certified road course ever in history. Ireland has a star-studded team, which includes Marcus O'Sullivan, but the key to their success could be John Treacy, the silver medalist at the 1984 Olympic Games in the marathon. There are 50 states, the District of Columbia, and New York City competing in the state relay teams. It's difficult to pick the top 3, but let's go right now with California, Arizona, and Massachusetts.
The spectacular skyline of New York City, the island of Manhattan, the most famous island in all the world, under cloudy skies and a 46-degree temperature at the moment. The wind 16 to 20, and it's underway. 50 kilometers, 31 miles, with some spectacular scenery in the background. The city of New York City. 305 runners will be competing here in this, the first ever Ekiden ever to be competed outside the nation of Japan. 61 5-man teams. The United States national team, 8 foreign national teams, a team from each of the 50 states, 1 from the host city of New York and 1 from the District of Columbia.
We got a quick glimpse there, Jim, of Steve Scott right up in the lead group. I would suspect that Scott and Marcus O'Sullivan, who is running for Ireland, there you see him on the left of the screen, to the left of the car, wearing a basically white color, will not take the lead and forge things, I don't think, until the latter stages of the 5K. For both of them, that's not an event, the 5K, that they're totally familiar with, despite Scott's great success here in his early ventures at the distance. But they're running right now, heading down towards the Wall Street area, and they'll cut over onto FDR Drive.
It all started at 46th Street and 1st Avenue in front of the United Nations, and the route will turn east on 53rd Street in just a little while. And again, this first leg, 5 kilometers. Now, as far as the runners are concerned, they're starting at 46 degrees, things to be careful of.
Really, I think, believe it or not, right here, the footing is fine. Some sections of New York, the road undulates more than most. It is a well-used city, as we all know. I think right now, and let me add this, in relay races, one thing that's important to note, you sometimes get caught up in the fervor of being on a team with other people. People run faster than they would normally on a 5,000-meter race that you are running for your own glory. And when you have teams, I think, is potentially bunched, as Ireland, Great Britain, and the United States, anybody can win. And they're also running for some serious prize money here, which we'll touch on later. I think most people are going to go out at a pretty even pace, Jim. I don't look for the legs on this race to be very tactical, as they might be if this was simply a major road race where you're running for yourself.
You saw the right-hand turn on East 53rd Street. This part of 53rd Street is a natural valley that separates Beekman Place on the south side from Sutton Place on the north. And there are two bluffs that actually overlook the East River. Some of Manhattan's most luxurious townhouses, most of them built back in the 1920s, are located in that 11-block strip. And now the course turning south on the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Drive, also called the East River Drive here in Manhattan. And a quarter of a mile to the north, the Queensboro Bridge, completed back in 1909.
Those apartments that you're just reviewing there probably cost more per square inch than anything you've ever seen any other place here. This is one expensive town. They are now heading out on the FDR Drive. We were seeing the early leader is, now let's talk about the Russian team. And frankly, it's hard to. I called the rooms of all of the Russian runners yesterday, and probably over a 5-hour period of time made 8 phone calls and never found any one of the Russians in the room. Found one phone off the hook and was unable to get much background information on them. Called the Russian embassy in New York and got a busy signal for 3 hours. I don't know what's going on, folks, but it's interesting to know that Glasnost is really here. These guys are competing for real money in Russia.
Over $200,000 in prize money. You look at the East River from the helicopter and the field starting to stretch out. The FDR Drive, the East River Drive, if you will, linking Queens with Manhattan, 5 boroughs of New York. Just want to get back to the weather for just a second, Larry. The runners going at the 5K 46 degrees. Will it affect them at all? Is that an advantage or a disadvantage, the temperature, as they go into the first tunnel?
Right. They're actually on the FDR Drive, if you're not familiar with New York. Just off to their left is the water of the East River. And one thing, the weather here, 46, is an ideal temperature. It is not too humid. The runners will have to contend the wind on the backstretch.
So we're on the first leg, 5 kilometers, a total of 50. It's 31 miles around the island of Manhattan. We'll take time out and be right back. The Ekiden. And from the helicopter, you're looking at a live picture. The 1988 America's Ekiden. And in first place, the early leaders. Again, this is 5 kilometers. The Soviet Union, followed by Ireland, who Larry Rawson felt would be very strong, along with Great Britain, also another very strong team. The first leg, 5 kilometers, followed by an 8-kilometer leg, a 12-kilometer leg, a 15-kilometer leg to the finish.
There you see some of the state teams hanging right up there with the Soviet Union. That's Mikhail Dasko from Leningrad forging the early pace. Right behind him is Great Britain. That's Dion McNeely, who is a technician in the Royal Air Force, number 31. Scott is wearing the all blue of the United States. Up on the balls of his feet, looking strong with a lot of newfound confidence Scott has. There you see him. He did not have a good indoor track season at the mile distance. And just this thing, he said, was a great confidence builder. The race he ran in Carlsbad just a week or two ago. This you're looking at is the Carlsbad race from 1987, and Scott was pouring it on as Gideon Shahanga from Tanzania trailed him down the home stretch. Scott lives nearby in Fallbrook, California, and he, as you can see, they're passing the 3-mile mark. There's 176 yards to let it go out. And when you're a top world-class distance runner, as the runners behind them have run marathons, it's hard to catch a miler who can run 1:45 for 800 meters. We had a chance to speak with Steve Scott and get his thoughts as he entered this race. There's Scott right there, running comfortably. There's Dion McNeely, who is a technician in the Royal Air Force and has really just burst into prominence in Great Britain. just this year. He is a 13:40 5,000 meter runner. There you see, passing wearing the green of Ireland, back in the pack, about in 7th place right now, and it's early in the first mile leg. The athletes are at about the 1.5 mile mark. That was Marcus O'Sullivan. Jim, I'd best describe this pace as comfortable. I don't think anybody here is running a 4:15 or 4:20 first opening mile. It looks very comfortable. Scott looks comfortable to me, and so doesn't the Russian. I don't think the Russians will be major factors in this. Looking at their best times for 5 and 10,000 meters and not being able to talk to the teams, I tried to speak with each of the coaches and many of the athletes to get a feel of where their heads were here. I don't think these guys are going to be able to run halfway through the race with the teams and the likes of Great Britain, Steve Jones, and a host of the talent that's here. Roger Hackney also will be running the second leg and is a very good runner for Great Britain.
There you see again the skyline of Manhattan. It's the Soviet. The 27-year-old native of Leningrad, Mikhail Dasko, continues to lead, approaching East 3rd Street. There is the first relay point where they will pass the Tasuki, which is actually a sash. They don't use batons in the Ekiden. They use the Tasuki.
And I think that's actually a plus. There's probably something psychological to gripping during the frustrating periods here and the tension that you have out on the race course, holding on to something, but it certainly is a little easier and more comfortable to just throw that sash around your shoulder. There you see O'Sullivan. As you look in your screen, he's wearing green, running right beside Scott. And I would look for a break by one of those guys with great speed who have run great miles this year, or great other 5,000 meters in Steve Scott's case, probably within the last mile. And we're past the 2-mile mark now. I think it could happen anytime in the next maybe 2 or 3 minutes. You might see Scott or someone break from the pack here and try and open up a lead in the rest of the field. Notice all of the other top teams, the state teams, hanging in there very, very well in the opening leg.
Those numbers that you see on the jerseys, by the way, 5-1, 8-1, 7-1, not morning line odds. There's no parimutuel wagering, all right? Each team has been assigned a team number. Japan number 1, Canada number 2, England number 3, and so on. And the dash after the hyphen means that these are the runners for the first leg.
We will try and point him out to you. He's running. If you look at the left and you look at the first runner in the group there's the group of, there's Dasko that I mentioned from Leningrad, from the Soviet Union. Directly behind him in blue is Ray Wixell from Arizona. And behind Wixell on the left is Vince Stratti running for California. So we're seeing some of the top teams hanging tough right up there at the state division and running very, very well.
Again, there are really two different types of competition going on right now. The international competition and the state competition. All of the states have been assigned colors as well as numbers. And all 50 states are represented. New York City has a representative team, as well as the District of Columbia.
Jim, if our viewers up there see a number 9 or lower to the left-hand part of the bib, the big letters up there, that is an international team or America's top team. And America is wearing 8 throughout the race. I'm sorry, the Russians are wearing number 8. The United States is wearing number 9. There's Marcus O'Sullivan wearing 5. All the other numbers, the higher numbers in orange, are the state teams that you're looking at. Colorado is expected to run well. I see Pennsylvania being led by Jim Norris. He's running their opening leg, number 49. Hanging tough. Look how many good state runners are hanging up here with the international stars.
Still on the FDR Drive, which links the boroughs of Queens and Manhattan. Welfare Island coming into view, known for its infamous prison. Fierce riptides in the East River surrounding that island actually acted as the prison walls because nobody could survive the 700-foot swim to the mainland, kind of the Alcatraz of the East.
I like it. I was going to say that myself. You stole my line, Kelly. There you see Wixell, that powerful man with a well-tanned look right now, running for Arizona. He's a very, very good miler running the 5,000-meter leg. I've said it many times, Jim, but if you young runners out there would consider this, if you consider yourself a miler, probably your best distance to run is the steeplechase or the 5,000 meters. Take your basic speed, train a little more on the distance end of your training, and you'll probably be a great 5,000 meter runner, as Steve Scott is now finding himself to really be. He is the American indoor mile record holder right now, Scott in the blue of the USA, and he also has the 4th fastest time outdoors ever run for the mile, and he converts that speed and runs a great 5,000 meters, which is 3.1 miles. Scott's run 3:47 for the mile. The man behind him, Marcus O'Sullivan, and by the way, they're picking things up now. There is Dasko, there you see right now, and he is, as I mentioned, from Leningrad. He is a 13:35 5,000-meter runner. He did that in 85, and he actually improved his time down just below 13:30 in 86.
Now you can see just over Dasko's right shoulder the runner from California. All right, 15, the number for California, 1 meaning again the first leg. That is Vince Dratty, 26 years old, out of San Diego. So as you look at Dratty, is he any kind of a rabbit right now, trying to press the pace and push the Soviet beyond what he ordinarily might try?
Not at all. Very fine runner at the University of Virginia. Look at Dratty go. This is impressive now. Now Dratty has run sub 4 minutes for the mile. He has run about 3:56, and the break is being made now. Look at Scott begin to power away. The runners are about 50 or 45 seconds. Look at Scott fly. Look at those cars go by. Any muggers in the streets right now don't have a chance. Look at Scott move. Dratty, and they're all out right now down the drive. The wind has been at their back most of this way. The wind is blustering at 16 miles an hour coming from the northwest. They are heading south. One of the biggest milers to ever run sub 4 minute mile at weighing 165 pounds. When you consider that most top milers are about 145 or 50, that's a lot of weight to carry. Here they come in for the first exchange, Jim.
So the 5Ks has been completed, a great first run, and the Tasuki, the sash, has been passed in the United States on the front end. Steve Scott did his job. This, the second leg, 8 kilometers, 5 miles even.
California is in second place ahead of all of the other international countries, and we have Arizona in third. The American team is out there right now in the lead. John Gregorek running for the international team. Unofficially, 13 minutes and 44 seconds. He covered 5,000 meters on the road. Steve Scott seems to be running well as he heads towards trying to compete at 1,500 meters in the Olympic Games for the United States.
All right, the second leg, 8 kilometers. Here's the course description. As they continue the East River Drive, it becomes South Street. They'll pass under 3 bridges that link the Lower East Side to Brooklyn. It starts with the Williamsburg Bridge. West is Little Italy, and then around South Street, and finally all the way down to City Hall. So 8 kilometers, 5 miles. As we're on the second leg, the United States was on the front end, and it is John Gregorek, the 27-year-old out of Barrington, Rhode Island, after a good first 5 kilometers by Steve Scott out of Fallbrook, California. We'll be back, live coverage, the 88 Ekiden on ESPN.
Now at the Furniture Warehouse.
We're knocking down walls and tearing down ceilings. We're also knocking down prices on every floor model.
America's Ekiden. I'm Jim Kelly. Larry Rawson is alongside. You're looking at live pictures of the world's most famous skyline, Manhattan, in the morning. It was 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time when the race began, 12,000 miles away. It's a little after 8 o'clock at night at Tokyo, where the Ekiden was born. The Soviet Union back out in front in the international competition, and the state leaders, Arizona, followed by Colorado and Alaska.
Boy, that's a surprise. Alaska's team, I hadn't expected them to be up there. There you see running in green, that is Frank O'Mara, the world indoor champion at 3,000 meters last year, at the first time the world indoor champion ever contested. Behind him, Mark Jukerman, who attends UCLA and is running for the California team. John Gregorek is right now in 5th place, and in the lead, we have another state team. That is Arizona, I think, is right up there. Yes, it is. It is Arizona. That's Jim Klein from Scottsdale.
25 years of age, out of Scottsdale. A little different, training out in Phoenix and running in Manhattan early in the morning. How about early morning training techniques? The first leg, run by America's Steve Scott, actually started at 7 o'clock in the morning. The runners had to be here at 6 o'clock. How about stretching and trying to get warmed up in 46-degree weather?
That's a good point, Jim. Many people prefer to run in the evenings, and they train their training sessions in the afternoon. And if you're in California time, it probably even complicates your body a little more. The adrenaline makes up for everything. You're all pumped up for this thing. You probably even wake up early, despite the fact they were all down there and probably loosening up at 5:30 in the morning for this. So I think your body compensates in the excitement of this event. As $200,000 are at stake. There's, you see, the international athletes right now and where they stand. Soviet Union running well. Maybe I should have suspected from past indoor track and field experience where I've seen the Soviets that they wouldn't send a team that was bad, even though they have been not known in the last 5 years for good 5 and 10,000 meter runners. They have good marathoners, the Soviet Union does, but they do not have good distance runners under the marathon distance. And yet we're seeing these runners now, at least in the early stages of the second race, run well.
Yegorviny Zabrinin, 23 years old, out of the Soviet Union, currently running in the 8-kilometer leg. And for Ireland, it is 28-year-old Roy Dooney out of Dublin. Of course, it's John Gregoric, the 27-year-old Barrington, Rhode Island native, who's running this 8-kilometer second leg for the United States. And again, they are still on the East River Drive, the FDR Drive, if you will, weaving its way. They will head on to South Street, where the course will go under the Manhattan Bridge. And then they'll have Little Italy and Chinatown coming into view in Manhattan's early morning hours.
Almost the entire Irish team lives and trains in the United States. O'Mara down in Arkansas, where he went to school and was a star before he stayed on there and working on graduate programs right now, is running comfortably, tailing the lead pack. You'll notice they're running Indian file. They will actually be happy once they hit the wind to let somebody else lead and tuck in behind, just as they do at Indianapolis. As you're looking right now at the Williamsburg Bridge, as the athletes are going down the FDR Drive as they head towards the Wall Street area.
That Williamsburg Bridge, Larry, opened back in 1903 at Delancey Street. Just to the west is Little Italy, where the population 98% Italian, some 50 years ago. Some great restaurants, of course.
Jim, there are human beings that have lasted, as far as their bodies go, better than the Williamsburg Bridge. They've closed down about half the bridge in the last week and a half here, creating massive traffic jams on the city because of some cracks in the steel beams. And there you see Arizona with Klein. Klein is not as well known as some of the other people out there. Arizona has a very strong team. Jukerman, coming off a very fine indoor season in the black for California, running right up with the international teams. To give you an idea of some of the strength that is represented here by American distance running, they're running up with the best. It's Zarabin of the Soviet Union in second, and John Gregoric trailing back comfortably in fifth place, as you see the runners peel off on the side.
And we do understand now from the course that there's a very strong headwind on the FDR Drive, the East River Drive, the river over the right-hand side. That's the Williamsburg Bridge in the upper right-hand side of your screen. But on this second 8-kilometer leg, a very strong headwind. How would that affect the runners?
Well, that's interesting. I'm trying to gauge here what's going on. There was a flag in the background I just was able to catch for a split second. But if that's true, it means the wind has turned around. Initially, the weather report said northwest winds, which would mean when you gum around the bottom, just like the state of Florida is the way this course is laid out. You come down the east side of the tip of Florida, go around by Miami, and come up the west side. In this case, it's the West Side Highway. And that's where the wind was supposed to be bad. It's interesting now that they're running into the wind as they head south. The temperature, 46 degrees, is ideal. The humidity is low. And that's why you're seeing the runners stay on the crest in the middle of the road, which is the high point of the road. And they're also running Indian file. That's a good indication that they are running into the wind, is right, Jim. When you have the wind at your back or there's no wind at all, the runners sometimes will run more side by side.
Leading the pack out of Arizona on the 8-kilometer leg, Jim Klein, 25, out of Scottsdale. And the Soviet is currently leading the international field. Leading the state competition, you're looking right there. A good look at Jim Klein running very easily, the Soviet.
Klein in Arizona is known for very good 5,000 meter running and also at 10,000 meters. This is his core distance in this whole range, as these runners right now are running 8 kilometers, which is 5 miles in effect. They're running a 5-mile leg on this race. The opening leg is 3.1 miles. The second leg is 5. The third is 7.4 miles. And the third is 9.3. That's the longest distance that's being run. And then 10 kilometers is an entire loop around the park. 6.2 miles will finish up this 31-mile race.
There are the standings in the 8-kilometer leg, the second leg. The United States in the second spot. John Gregoric currently is running there. Great Britain is running third. Roger Hackney, 30-year-old London native. And you looked at the aerial just a few seconds ago, the South Street Seaport coming into view as they continue to wind their way down into lower Manhattan. Larry, as we look at the international field and the standings, has any country stood out over the rest of the outstanding distance races so far?
Well, when you look back in history at marathons and distance races, no country has ever had a lock on it. Czechoslovakia, in the form of Zatopek, was a freedom fighter, a Greek waiter, an Ethiopian army sergeant, an Argentinian newsboy, a French auto mechanic. All were people who won Olympic marathon titles. It has not gone to any particular pocket of the globe. Right now, the Mexicans are running quite well, but they're not dominating. If any country has done well in the last few years, it's probably the Kenyans, who are altitude trained. We may touch upon that as the event goes on. Many people feel that training up at 5,000 and 8,000 feet, Jim, is actually a good way to get the body used to running at sea level, because you force your body to train with less oxygen. Yevgeny Zarabin of the Soviet Union is holding fourth here in the international race. The United States running very comfortably, along with Ireland right up there. Interesting to note here, Great Britain has fallen back early here in the race.
And for Great Britain, that second leg belongs to Roger Hackney. As you look at the lower east side of Manhattan, they will wind their way. The South Street Seaport that we showed you before was in the upper right-hand side of your screen. It continues to be the 25-year-old native of Scottsdale, Jim Klein, in the front end. He is the lower left-hand side of your screen right there, wearing number 13-2. 13 designates the state of Arizona. 2 represents the second leg of our race here, the Ekiden, which, by the way, is being viewed around the world on all of the television networks, satelliting it back to the home countries. And we'll be back on our second leg of the Asics Cup, America's Ekiden. Play in good morning from Midtown Manhattan. The Asics Cup, America's Ekiden. 50 kilometers around the island of Manhattan, 31 miles. And we're in the second leg, where the Soviet Union continues to lead the international race. Yevgeny Zarabin, a 23-year-old Soviet, is currently out in front in the international division, and the American 25-year-old Jim Klein out of Scottsdale leading the team competition. John Gregorek, running the second leg internationally for the United States, has fallen back in the pack. Again, a strong headwind on this, the second leg, 8 kilometers, and they are under the tunnel. They have begun to come around lower Manhattan. We talk about the strong headwind. All of a sudden, Larry, you enter the tunnel, there's no wind at all.
That's probably a welcome relief, Jim. You psychologically feel like you're going a little faster. It's comfortable. It gives you a chance to kind of regroup and face that wind again. The wind also makes the race tactical. You'll find people with more speed than maybe the guy up front. Klein does not have the sprint speed that Gregorek or O'Mara have. You'll notice the two guys that I think have the best potential kicks, the green of O'Mara from Ireland and Gregorek, who is last in this group, are sitting back, letting the other guys who lack the speed force the pace. They will probably pull out at some point in time and try and blast by these guys.
Gregorek, wearing the blue for the United States, has now fallen back into the 5th spot.
Makes no difference because he's right up with the lead pack. It's no problem at all.
So that is the Soviet, Yevgeny Zarabin, out of the Soviet Union, 23 years of age. As he forges ahead, John Gregorek is currently running 5th for the United States. This, the 8 kilometers second leg. Let's meet John.
At 27 years of age, he's in the prime of his distance running life. Gregorek is a 1980 and 84 U.S. Olympian at the steeplechase distance and intends on trying for his 3rd U.S. Olympic team at 5,000 meters. After this year, he says he intends to concentrate on road racing. First of all, it's more lucrative. Secondly, he's had a very fine career. Probably only 1 or 2 other Americans have been able to be as successful on the roads and on the track at the same time. His fastest time for the steeplechase, 8 minutes, 18 seconds. The distance very similar to running 2 miles all out.
I think it's fantastic. I'm really excited to be able to run with these guys that are on my team that I've always just raced against, and I think it's the first time I'll be rooting for them, and it's just going to be fun having the guys of that much talent either handing you the sash or you handing them the sash and just waiting to see what happens. I'm excited.
The runners have moved through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel underpass, the race turning north along West Street. Back in 1811, the bank along the Hudson River was filled in to build docks, which created West Street. By the turn of the century, West Street had actually replaced South Street as the main commercial gateway and was more valuable as far as waterfront property was concerned. There, the famous skyline of Manhattan.
Gregorek has finished approximately 3.5 to 4 miles of his leg of the race, and he has about a mile left to go. You notice him moving in a position to start to pick up the pace here and force things. The Soviet Union's Zarabin trying to go with him. Notice the order has changed now. They've moved from back there where they were resting in effect and letting the state runners try and break the wind. Klein is falling back a bit. Jukerman, who had a very fine indoor season, is a very good steeplechaser, is holding on well, and the pace now is accelerating as Gregorek is starting his long build towards the handoff here after completing 5 miles of this race.
And of course the sashes that they're wearing called the Tasuki, the Ekiden, worldwide. You know, the Japanese, of course, are watching. It's about 8:30 at night back in Tokyo and in all of Japan. And you talk about the Ekidens. There are over 500 Ekidens held every year in Japan at every level of skill. They attract media and television coverage in their native Japan equal to that of football and baseball coverage here in the United States.
Jim, I was amazed at this. I chatted with people from Japan who were involved in television advertising, and they have 10 of them that are nationally televised, and the one that draws the greatest amount of attention on television has a 35% market share of all televisions in the country. So more than 1 out of 3 are turned on to watch one of the Ekidens.
Well, the Japanese people, Larry, watch the Ekidens as part of their New Year's celebration, much the way Americans gather to watch the barrage of college football bowl games.
The longest Ekiden that they have, Jim, is 500 kilometers. It's a 300-mile race.
300 miles.
Absolutely.
Again, it was 46 degrees as you look at the skyline of Manhattan and one of the 5 bridges.
There you see Gregorek powering along. America chose its top 5 runners. It was, frankly, a fairly controversial thing inside the sport, as many people wanted to be on the national team. And they selected people who had pretty much run their best or American record holders at their respective distances that are being raced in this Ekiden. And Gregorek has amongst the fastest times ever for 5 miles and also for 10 kilometers, which is 6.2 miles.
Again, transmission from helicopters and from live vehicles will occasionally break up. There's a world feed going obviously all around the world. Our international competition, runners from Japan, from Canada, from England, from France and Ireland, Italy, Korea, the Soviet Union, and of course the United States, where John Gregorek now has taken over the top spot, and the international leaders, the standings through 11 kilometers. Ireland, it's Frank O'Mara running the second leg out of Limerick, Ireland, no less. And the Soviet Union, Yevgeny Zarabin, still running right on the heels of John Gregorek.
Gregorek is a runner who can kick well and almost with the very best people that you may run across in distance running. But more often than not, he tends to build over a longer period of time. Like he might have in a race like this a strong half-mile finish, where a guy like O'Mara, who is trailing him, has blazing sprint speed and is happy to try and contest the finish line to get there first over only the last 300 yards. So it is in Gregorek's best interest to try and make a long, sustained kick to pull away. There is also prize money here for the fastest of each of the legs that the runners will be competing for. There's the finish line they'll be shooting for, and the prize money here totals $200,300 that everybody's contesting for. I think it's great that the Russians are going to get a chance to participate in some money for running.
That finish line, by the way, at the Tavern on the Green in New York Central Park, the same finish line for the New York City Marathon. They'll run around 840 acres of famous real estate in Manhattan, otherwise known as Central Park.
John Gregorek, 27 years of age, resting pulse 38.
And of course, part, Larry, of the second leg will be run around some of the tallest skyscrapers, the shadows of the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, the highest skyscrapers in Manhattan, the huge canyons of New York City.
Jim, that side, the area they're on right now, coming up the west side, is scheduled for a lot of renovation. Things like that ported terminal building that you see at the top over Gregorek's head. All that's very valuable real estate that's getting changed. As you look at Johnny Poley, who won the 1986 New York Marathon right there, with the little earring dangling in his ear there. Poley has run 2:13 for the marathon this year, hopes to make the Italian Olympic team at that distance. He is down to run the third leg.
Quite a festive mood throughout the island of Manhattan, of course. The area they're approaching now, the area known as Chelsea. Some great restaurants and taverns down in that part of the west side.
Look at Gregoric let the gas pedal down here. He is just hammering away, and he's opening up the big gap here. Now watch and see. Here comes O'Mara trying to make some headway here as they come in towards the exchange zone. Jukerman in 4th place. California is leading in the team title race. Notice Arizona's fallen back dramatically. The pace picked up very, very quickly here over the last mile. Look at the difference in the lake speed that you see with Gregoric and in the middle of that 5-mile lake that they were running. The Russians holding on very well. Irish are doing very, very well here. I'm surprised O'Mara is not out kicking Zarabin.
And here comes the exchange, the Tashuki, the Sash. And for the United States, it's Pat Porter out of Colorado. Gregoric is done a successful 8 kilometers. They start the 12-kilometer run now, and Pat Porter's out there for the United States. The state competition out of California. Running on this 3rd leg, Bob Asics out of Menlo Park. He's 29 years of age. So the 3rd leg, 12 kilometers.
There's Jim Klein looking. Oh, no. What is going on here? Oh, here goes. That's Art Menchaca from Arizona.
All right, 7.4 miles, 12 kilometers, the 3rd leg. Again, it's up the west side of Manhattan, the West Side Highway, the Hudson River on their left, New York on their right, New Jersey across the river to the left, and they will finally make a right-hand turn up on the upper west-hand side. The area they have just come through, West Street, where the Washington Market vendors used to sell their goods between 4 and 10 o'clock every morning. They cross Spring Street, of course, skirting the western border of very famous Greenwich Village. Of course, a lot of movies have made there. A lot of coffee shops back in the areas of the beatniks.
That's the Italian team, Jim, passing off to Johnny Poli. And they're about in 5th place. There you see another one of the state teams passing off Colorado, hanging tough up here, running right up with the best of the international teams.
Larry, the passing of the Tashuki, not as easy as a baton. A little trouble with the wind. It's not as smooth, and certainly the Americans have never done it before. I don't know if they practiced it at all, but in the wind you saw a couple of mix-ups and some valuable time was lost.
That's true. You know, maybe it actually causes them a second or two in the whole race. It might be more comfortable when it's on you. I did see Steve Scott, though, pull the thing and try and adjust it. A couple times it kept sliding off his face. That's probably a good way Porter has it carried on him. It's right underneath his armpit. It's over the side of his shoulder. He's got the bulk of it behind him.
So as the runners are now on the 3rd leg, the international standings, the United States first, Ireland is second, the Soviet Union is 3rd. The 3rd leg, 13 kilometers, the Asics Cup.
The price of this car is $29.95, but sometimes I lie. If you take a chance on our song and dance, you'll be sorry you ever did buy.
Hi, I'm Tom Flurkey, and when you buy a used car from me, what you won't get is a song and dance. But what you will get is a good used car that fits your budget. And by the way, the real price and conditions of sale are right on the windows.
Tom Flurkey Chevrolet, Route 106, Mansfield. You can talk turkey with the folks at Tom Flurkey's.
Travel in sophisticated style with Sophisticated Limousine. We'll take you out for a night on the town, deliver you to the airport in luxury, even get you to the church on time. Sophisticated Limousine provides you with a high-tech, luxurious interior while you ride in style, appropriate for any occasion. For business or for pleasure, Sophisticated Limousine will suit your every need. Call Sophisticated Limousine at 831-5466 for it.
The world's most famous city comes alive with a pace indigenous only to New York. From the solitude of an early morning runner with Manhattan as a backdrop, running is a ritual in New York City. It's enjoyed by individuals and it's enjoyed by the masses.
20,000 people competed in the 1987 New York City Marathon as they left the edge of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge.
And the world's most famous indoor sports arena, New York's Madison Square Garden, home to indoor running.
The Milrose Games, RTAC National Indoor Championships, are held here.
The New York City Marathon weaves its way through all 5 boroughs. Central Park provides the backdrop as the ladies join the ritual with race walking.
This was a World Championship event held in 1987.
Van Cortlandt Park provides yet another venue.
It was the 1987 National Cross Country Championships.
Park Avenue allows just one race every year.
And that, Jim, is the Corporate Challenge Series. It's their national championships. The Fifth Avenue Mile is hosted just 2 blocks over.
Fifth Avenue, famous for expensive real estate and even more expensive shopping. New York City, known for its world-famous restaurants, arts and theater, home for all types of runners, and now a world-class field comes to Manhattan to introduce America to an ancient Japanese race. Manhattan in the morning, the international standings. 14 kilometers have been completed. They'll run 50, and for the United States, out of Alamosa, Colorado, Pat Porter, 28 years of old. 28 years of age, setting the lead right now. Roy Dooney is 30 out of Dublin, currently running in the second spot. But look at Pat now. He's really opened up some large, big lead here as he stretches it out on the west side of Manhattan.
Jim, one of the hallmarks of Porter is he loves to take runners out fast when he takes over either a relay leg like this or even in his cross-country races. He's 6 times our national cross-country champion. And he may run his first mile, and you can see his hair just being streaked back by the breeze on the west side there. But he may run his first mile here in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Let's update everybody. Steve Scott ran 13 minutes 44 seconds unofficially. That's a 4-minute 20-second per mile average. And John Gregoric, pulling America into the lead after sitting back in the pace there at the very end, averaged 4 minutes 36 seconds into that headwind you talked about. His leg 23 minutes 1 second.
Again, the west side of Manhattan. They have run past Greenwich Village, kind of a village with its own individuality, a town within a city, if you will, and past 11th and 12th Avenues back in the 1930s, the site of several conflicts between picketeers and scabs. The National Maritime Union coming into view, established in the early 1900s, of course, skirting the western edge of Chelsea, and the industrial center, a large Irish population. Spaniards and French also settled into the neighborhood. Wrought iron balconies. There you look at Manhattan in the morning. It was 46 degrees. Temperature up now just about to 51 degrees.
Porter has about a 50, maybe a 60-yard lead on Ireland in the presence of Roy Dooney, as you mentioned, the 30-year-old Dublinite here, hanging tough with the Russians. That's Oleg Strizakov that you see in the red distance behind. They may be even about 75, 80 meters behind right now Porter as he just kind of lopes along with his powerful stride. A very, very hard trainer. He's been known to do a workout of 6 individual miles with a 3-minute rest in between, and he does them at 7,600 feet where the air is thinner. It's harder to run fast up there, and he can average between 4 minutes and 15 seconds and 4 minutes 20 seconds per mile with just a 3-minute rest. Just phenomenal training.
You see Pat looking over his left shoulder, but he's got a big lead right now. He's again running on the third leg, which is 12 kilometers. His best distance would seem to be 10 kilometers. He's really the American cross-country king. We showed you Van Cortlandt Park in that feature a few minutes ago. He captured, Pat did, his 6th straight U.S. cross-country title in New York's Van Cortlandt Park last November.
Mentally a very tough guy as we look at the incredible skyline of New York City. I live in this city, and it never fails to impress me. The energy level, the achievement level, and the majesty of the city.
It's a city with a pace all its own, certainly a pace indigenous just to New York. The city, as they say, never sleeps.
Porter trains at 7,600 feet, as I mentioned. He sometimes on his runs goes up to 12,000 meters, 12,000 feet of sea level, I should say, where the air is even thinner. At that altitude of 7,600 feet, the air is 23% thinner, and it forces the body to utilize less oxygen, so that when you come down to sea level, it helps you aerobically, and you tend to perform better. And it's, many people feel it's why the Kenyans who live at 7,000 feet actually run better.
So it's still the United States leading on the third leg. Pat Porter, 28 years of age, a big lead for Uncle Sam in America's first Ekiden.
we intelligent, independent, adventurous types drink. Celestial Seasonings herb tea. Even the box is special, and when you open it, oh, hello. Ever walk into a tea shop? They call this one Mandarin Orange Spice, and they mean it. Celestial Seasonings taste richer. They put in more fruit and herbs. No, I haven't actually counted them. You won't have to either.
Celestial Seasonings, herb teas, more tastefully done.
20 years ago, if you were caught eating Dannon yogurt in Jackson, Wyoming, you might have been considered a little strange. But oh, how times have changed. The fact is, today, Americans eat nearly twice as much pure, low-fat Dannon yogurt, like authentic Dannon fruit on the bottom, as they did just 5 years ago. Which makes us at Dannon feel good, and makes a whole lot of other people feel pretty good as well. Dannon is yogurt.
My dad has 2, my brother has 1, I now have 3, Mom has 2. I had it 2 years, and it's going to be 3 years in December.
Almost 5 years.
For 10 years.
No problems whatsoever.
No problem.
Absolutely none.
Worth every penny.
Every dime. It's more reliable than my husband. My husband's not around anymore, but my Seiko is.
Seiko.
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 Seiko, it's just your style.
It's perfect. It is.
Welcome back to Manhattan. You're looking at the Intrepid, one of the world's most famous aircraft carriers. Now a great museum here in the United States, docked on the west side of Manhattan. The prize money for America's initial Asics Cup, America's Ekiden for the international teams. Out of a total purse of $200,300, the international teams will be vying for $53,500. International members, $52,000. The state teams, $42,800, and state members, $52,000.
We should probably mention when they say international members and state members, it's who has the fastest relay legs, and you receive prize money based on where you finish 1 through 5 as a runner individually and how your team finishes.
International teams, first place $20,000, second place $15,000, and so on down the line. $200,000 as you look at live pictures of New York, Midtown Manhattan, early in the morning. This race now just about an hour old. It began at 7 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. You're looking at the west side of Manhattan over on the left-hand side of your screen. That's the Hudson River. New Jersey is also over on the left. The Jacob Javits Center coming into view. The area known as Hell's Kitchen for the kitchen gang that used to rob the railroad yards and terrorize the neighborhood after the Civil War. Still not an area you'd like to stroll leisurely through, Larry Rawson.
Did you spend a week doing this history? I love it.
I lived in New York, too. Pat Porter on the lead for the United States, the 28-year-old. He's running the third leg, 12 Ks. Let's meet him, Larry.
His goal is to be a distance running star in 1996, Jim, when he then will be 37 years of age. He's considered in the track and field work to be one of the most mentally tough runners America has ever had. His strong points, difficult, hard training sessions. One of his best assets is he's rarely ever injured. He trains up in Alamosa, Colorado, an Adams State graduate. Some people up there call him an alcoholic. He takes a lot of pride in this national team competition. He's been a team cross-country runner for a long time. We talked with him about that.
Well, there's a lot of pride out there in being selected as a national team member. You're going to do your best to uphold that. You're going to try not to get beat by someone else from a state team. On the other end of the coin, someone from the state team is going to feel like maybe I should have been selected on a national team, so I'm going to go out there and prove that I deserve to be on the U.S. team. So they're going to be out there trying to beat you too. So that adds a whole different dimension to the race. It's going to keep you on your toes.
I talked about his workaholic tendencies. His coach, Joe Vigil, is constantly trying to have him slow down and not train as hard. His program is very, very intense, and it's rare. He and Bill Rogers are two guys I can think of that have been rarely injured during their careers.
Not an unfamiliar sight as you look at the west side. A traffic jam on the opposite side of the West Side Highway. It's his last kilometer. Pat Porter for the United States, surprisingly on the lead. A surprisingly strong showing by Uncle Sam. You expected Great Britain to be very much in contention along with Ireland.
Yes, the big surprise, I guess, is the British right now, and their weakest link was Dion McNeely, and he has put them in a bit of a hole. They are back in the lead. Steve Jones is still yet to run, and Steve Binns, who's very, very fit, too. They have strong legs coming up. The Great Britain team does. The United States has a solid team, Jim, throughout. I'm not concerned about them. And you'll also be seeing John Treacy, who I mentioned, on the longest leg in this race, the 9.3 leg. Tracy's going to be running, and he is very, very good.
To the east of what you're looking at right now, the Garment Center, Times Square, the Theater District. Again, the standings, the United States on top. Pat Porter in his last kilometer. The Soviet Union is currently in the second spot, and Ireland with Roy Dooney, 30 years old, the Dublin native, currently running. Of course, as you're looking, the Lincoln Tunnel is there, opened up in 1937. Great Britain is fourth, by the way. Midtown Manhattan, New Jersey is across the river. They're approaching 59th Street, Central Park, lying directly to the east. Lincoln Square, the Dakota apartment building, maybe one of the most famous apartment buildings besides yours.
Well, of course, it was the home of John Lennon, you know, and the tragedy that befell him occurred right in front of the Dakota. Notice the lead has been lengthened right here pretty dramatically by Porter. He's been running at about a 4:35 mile pace for his leg, which is 7.4 miles long.
Not very far from where you're looking is New York's Madison Square Garden, the home of the Rangers. The Rangers missed the National Hockey League playoffs, but the Devils, who play about 8 miles to the west, are in it. And you'll see the Road to the Cup exclusively on ESPN. Of course, Mike Emmerich, Bill Clement, Tom Mees have been doing such a terrific job. Watch the NHL's finest go all out for 4 weeks. Lightning pace, hard-hitting hockey action. The Road to the Stanley Cup, only here on ESPN. Looked for a while like it was going to be an all-New York playoff series between the Rangers and the Islanders, but it turned out to be the Devils and the Islanders.
They have, the Devils have just played amazing hockey. This team is probably playing as good as anybody in the NHL right now.
Again, they're coming down the West Side Highway. Some of the original bricks you would think are right there. The United States now being pressured because running that third leg, Pat Porter, again, he's on his last kilometer, and the Soviets now are coming up. The 24-year-old, he's only 5'11", 132 pounds, Oleg Strikovkov. Great Britain moving up into the fourth spot. The West Side Highway, by the way, Larry, it seems like it's been under repair for the last 10 years. I don't think they'll ever finish it.
I'll tell you, it's the legendary political football in New York City.
Ireland is third with Roy Dooney. Great Britain, Steve Binns, 27-year-old London native, but they are far in arrears of the Soviet and Pat Porter.
Strikovkov, who you're looking at, has run 10,000 meters on the track in 28 minutes, 23 seconds. He did that 3 years ago. Again, I'm impressed here. I really didn't think that the team would hold together this well from the Soviet Union. That's the big surprise so far. Great Britain, we talked about, is trailing in fourth place. It was California and Arizona in the team race that were behind, as of a mile ago, behind these two runners by about 300 yards. So as we have gotten into the body of the race, we're now 54 minutes into it. They have fallen off the pace.
Running parallel to the West Side Highway, as you see Pat Porter checking his time. And there are coaches here. They're in a lead vehicle, but it's almost impossible to do any coaching.
That's very true. That's a good point.
You're really just an observer.
Yes, exactly. And you can imagine if you're the coach right now at Great Britain, you can't even yell encouragement or note something he may be doing.
You can't even see your runner.
That's true. That's true. Especially the Japanese and the Koreans, who are way back.
That's Pat Porter leading the United States. This, the third leg of the 50-kilometer. Early morning in Manhattan. Porter on the pace, stretching out, trying to draw the United States to victory. We'll be back.
When you just ask for a light, anything can happen.
I'd like a light, please. No. I want decorative lighting, like the name brands featured at Mastro Electric.
This week at Mastro Electric, save 15% off the distinctive style and craftsmanship of American Lantern. So don't just ask for a light.
I'm looking for a light.
Ask for a light from Mastro Electric. Locations in
Orton. And in fifth, it is Great Britain with Steve Binns as they are coming to the next relay point. Riverside Drive, a famous place for New Yorkers to race their carriages back in the 1800s as this race continues. Edgar Allan Poe lived in the neighborhood in the summer of 1843 and 1844. 29 seconds, almost a half a minute advantage for Pat Porter, who is being pressed by the Soviet, but in the last 3 or 4 minutes has really drawn away.
Very good point. Look at him grimacing and pumping his arms harder than we've seen him. It probably indicates the wind going up that west side drive. Notice the sash is tucked way up under the arm. That's probably a decent indication about the wind. It's certainly not at their back when it's tucked so tightly around their front. As you see them pass by different kilometer marks. The runners have completed 4.5 miles of this 7.4-mile leg, Jim. And he started with a 50-yard lead, translates to about 9 or 10 seconds, and he's lengthened that by about another 125 yards so far.
That's Roy Dooney on the left-hand side of your screen. Strizakov over on the right-hand side. And it looks like Dooney is having a little bit of a problem right now. He looks to be running a little more strenuously than the Soviet, way back over their shoulders. Currently running in the 4th spot.
I think that might be Johnny Poli back there.
I believe, yes, I believe they might have changed the order. That might be Poli out of Italy.
And he looks like he might be holding his own with those other 2 runners up front. We'll see. Italy has moved now into 4th place, and I think it's the 1986 New York Marathon champion who running well up here. He might even catch those 2 guys before he's through. Look at the stride on Porter. The 6'2", lean young man, 147 pounds, who is a native Colorado.
Advantage for him to be so tall, and the Soviet who was pressing him is so small in stature. Is that an advantage?
It depends. You know, I think sometimes the weight's the more important factor. It's hard for a guy as Steve Scott's ability to run as well over 10,000 meters. Scott's very good at 5,000, but you're carrying a lot of weight here. I think the main thing is your body aerobically can handle being a 125-pounder if you train hard, or you can weigh as much as 150 pounds and still be a good distance runner.
The Russian only weighs 132 pounds. If he gets a tailwind, he can catch Porter.
Well, you know, I think actually the less weight you weigh, Jim, if you train well and have good inherent abilities, the better the distance runner you can be. I've done studies of the weights of half-milers, 10,000-meter runners, and marathoners, and the farther you run, the lighter the world-class runners are.
There's a rocky knob at 84th Street and Riverside Drive called Mount Tom. That was Edgar Allan Poe's favorite spot to sit and gaze, and I would imagine to compose. Riverside Drive and 122nd Street, set on the crest of a hill, is Riverside Church. All the architecture patterned after the 13th century cathedral in France. Also nearby, Grant's Tomb and the Claremont Inn, completed back in 1783. And Claremont back then, a high society restaurant in the days before the Civil War. Last kilometer, Porter starting to slow down just a tad.
That is about a 4 minutes and 40 second mile pace a kilometer at that 2 minutes and 42 seconds. But you can see the grimacing. The wind must be something out there, and that sash is you know, tightly woven around him at this point.
But I want to interrupt, Glory, too. I pointed out he's slowing down a bit, but so is the rest of the field. He's increased his lead by almost 9 seconds.
Right. I talked about his legendary training, this man on your screen. He's one of America's hopes for a possible medal in an Olympic final at 10,000 meters. But he said he got his discipline in life and his hard training from his dad. He said he watched all his life, train hard, and preached these gospels into him about what success means. And he said, I give it 100% in my training every day.
Thinking about the exchange now, the Tesuki, the sash around his neck. Pat Porter out of Alamosa, Colorado. Next up for the United States, Mark Chirp.
From Alamosa, 1984, Olympic 10,000-meter finalist, and only 3 people get that honor in each distance race that they qualify time-wise in America. 3 members of our Olympic team were on the marathon team, 3 at 5,000 and 3 at 10,000, and you're looking at one of them right there, Pat Porter, who finished 6th in the World Cross Country Championships, which is just a brutal event, in 1987. This year he did not have a good race. He finished 28th.